And now for part 2 of my interview with Executive Director of UNICEF, Anne Veneman. Do you feel that, particularly in these tough economic times, people in the United States are as focused as they should be on some of these global problems? There are a lot of people, obviously, here at home who are saying, wait a minute, I don't have health care, or my husband just lost his job, and they're dealing with their own issues. Have you found it's a tougher time for UNICEF?
Well, it is around the world. It's not just in the U.S., but it is a tough time in terms of, raising money and trying to keep the focus on the issues of the international arena. But I think it's also important for people to remember that those who are most vulnerable are most likely to be most affected by the economic crisis. So if you're already living on $1 or $2 a day, what are you going to give up? Your child may go from 3 meals a day to 1. Your child may be taken out of school because you no longer can afford to send that child to school because you need that child to beg on the streets or to work in dangerous kinds of activities. Or you may deny your child health care simply because you can't afford it. And so I think as we look at tough times in our own countries in the developed world, we also have to look at those people who are most vulnerable in the developing world because they're likely to be, even more impacted because their resources are so low.
When you talk about the importance of healthcare, and you've seen so many countries across the world, here obviously at home we're battling over healthcare and the universality of healthcare. Do you have any thoughts on that? Without getting into a hyper-partisan discussion, I'm just interested in your fundamental views on healthcare and what's happening now in Washington.
Well, I think the issue of access to healthcare is critical no matter where you are in the world. And so I think the challenge in this country is how do we make sure through the proper policies and programs that people have universal access to health care. Nobody should be without access. But that's a problem all around the world. How do we ensure that people have access to health care? In most parts of the world, in the remotest villages, how do you get health care to people? And yet, organizations like UNICEF and others have really helped to expand access to health care around the world.
So I want to get back to your time in Washington. You were in the administration of George W. Bush. How is it now reacting to some of the criticism against the former president? How does that make you feel personally?
Well, I really have now been working in the UN for over 4 years. I really don't get involved in domestic politics that much. And so the criticism is, out there of any president. And I think, as we go forward, people have to look at the good things that have happened. As I look at the international arena and I look at what President Bush did, he did 2 very important things. One, he put a huge amount of money into AIDS and fighting AIDS in Africa and making medicines available. It's called the PEPFAR program. That combined with the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria has made a tremendous difference in fighting AIDS, which was killing so many people, particularly in Southern Africa. Also, the President's malaria program has put a tremendous amount of money into, bed nets, availability for women and children in the developing world. So, I try to look at what are some of the connections with the work that I've been doing today.
And interestingly, your name was bandied about in the presidential election campaign of Barack Obama as a potential vice presidential running mate. Politico put your name in as someone who they thought might be considered. What was that like when you first read that?
Well, actually, when I heard about this, I had just arrived in Madagascar. And so I was off in a very remote area without much access and was getting sporadic emails about this. I was certainly flattered to have my name put out there, but I did not hear from the campaign.
Now, you went through a very difficult personal circumstance. At age 53, you were diagnosed with breast cancer. Can you talk a little bit about that experience and when you first received the news, how you felt and how, as a working woman with a very powerful career, how you were able to navigate that?
Well, it's never easy news to hear, but because I was in the cabinet at that time, I was quite public about it. I talked about the importance of getting mammograms. This would not have been detected without a mammogram. I have to say that one of the most moving things that's happened to me are people that came to me and said, I have a friend who says you saved her life because you went on TV and talked about the importance of mammograms, and she went and got one and was able to catch her breast cancer. So I feel that the position I was in and the fact that I was able to be quite public about it really did help other people, and that makes me feel like that I was able not only to get through it myself, but to help others as well.